guys, it's Sarah, and today I have my one book that I'm going to be doing my July ARC reviews for. I did have a separate review go up last week of He Started It by Samantha Downing, and that it was part of the blog tour, so I kept that one separate. This is the other ARC that I read that comes out in July, and I did have more, honestly, but I just wasn't able to get to them before we had to start doing all of our moving stuff, so because of that, I had to kind of pick and choose which ones I was going to highlight, but I definitely wanted to highlight this one because this one was a lot of fun. So I'm going to be talking today about The Mall by Megan McCafferty. Now, this is a book that is published by Wednesday Books, and it comes out July 28th. This was originally supposed to come out in June, but because of the coronavirus and everything like that, it did get pushed to the end of July. So this one is a young adult book, and it is set in the 90s, specifically 1991 in New Jersey, and it follows a girl who is working a summer job at a mall right after high school graduation. So this follows our main character, Cassie, and she is working a summer job at a American cookie shop inside a mall, and she's working there with her boyfriend, who has been her boyfriend for 2 years. They go to work one day, and something pretty bad happens, and this is kind of her first day back after being sick with mono. She was sick with mono for a few weeks, so she hadn't been around anybody at all, including her boyfriend, and this is kind of her first, like, she's recovered, she's going back to work type thing. So something pretty bad happens. She's confronted by some things that have been happening while she was sick that she wasn't aware of. But bottom line, she loses her boyfriend, she loses her job, and she's kind of in a spot where she's not sure what she's going to do because she is getting ready to go to college and she needs to save up some money to be able to do that. And she can't tell her parents that she doesn't have a job now. So she's still going to the mall, you know, kind of under the guise, and she's trying to find another job. So she ends up working at a boutique with a girl who used to be really good friend, who she used to be really good friends with, and they've had a falling out, but now they're working together again. And so you're seeing Cassie navigate all this stuff. She's meeting new people. She is learning new things about people she already knew. And something happens during one of her shifts where she is made aware that there is some sort of scavenger hunt available in the mall. And it is based on some people who own some stores in the mall, and they hid a huge amount of cash somewhere in the mall, but then they were arrested and never got back to collect the cash. And there's supposed to be kind of little Easter eggs hidden around the mall, like a scavenger hunt type thing with clues and maps and everything. And so she gets wrapped up in trying to figure this out with another person. So they're trying to figure out where this treasure is and all that. All the while, she's having some family issues as well. She's still running into her ex-boyfriend. She has just some really awkward encounters with new people, and just some things that happen because of that. So a lot happens in here for such a short book. But okay, so that's the basic premise of the book. Now, my thoughts. I ended up giving this a 4-star. Now, it's probably more of a 3.5, but I rounded up to 4 because I didn't want to round down to a 3 because my enjoyment of it was more of a 4-star. But based on the substance and some things I had issues with, it's probably more of a 3.5, but that's what it is. So some issues I had with it. The biggest issue I had was I didn't like a lot of the decisions that Cassie was making towards the end of the book. Now, this definitely has a lot of character development. Cassie really discovers who she is. You know, she's 18 or 17, I think, and she's, you know, her world is changing around her. So she's kind of realizing some things about herself and learning who she is without having this boyfriend that she had for 2 years, and kind of realizing that maybe he was making some of the decisions in her life for her. And so she's coming into her own a little bit, which I did like, but I didn't like a lot of the decisions that she was making. I thought they were a little bit reckless, and it didn't make a lot of sense compared to deep down the person that she really is and that she always has been, even without this boyfriend. She's still a pretty responsible person and thinks about the future, and things like that matter to her, but she made some pretty reckless decisions, and I didn't like that. I didn't think it was very true to her actual character. And I also did not appreciate the way she was treating one of the people in this book towards the end. It seemed like she was just kind of pushing this person off as, you know, oh yeah, I'm going to help you with this. I'm going to help you with this. But she never had any intention to help her with it and was trying to just kind of push her off. And I didn't like that at all. It felt very ungenuine. Is that a word? Like she wasn't, you know, actually trying to help this person. She was just saying she was going to, and she had never had any intention of doing it. And I just didn't like that. So those are a couple of the issues that I had. One other thing that I think is interesting is that this is marketed for young adults. However, it's set in the 90s. So there's talk of scrunchies, and yes, scrunchies are making a comeback. So I think the young adults today could probably, you know, understand that. But all the 90s music like Morrissey and New Kids on the Block and, you know, just all these bands that were so big back then, and the fashion that was big back then, some of the slang that was big back then. And I just don't think that today's young adults are really going to relate to it that much, which is why I don't think it's getting as high ratings as it probably could be. I don't think it's marketed to the right audience. Just because Cassie, you know, is a young adult, today's young adults are not really going to understand a lot of the happenings in here. And, you know, there were no cell phones, there was answering machines, you know, you couldn't get a hold of people like that. Cabbage Patch dolls were a big thing in here. Not a lot of people even know what Cabbage Patch dolls are anymore. So I just don't think it's marketed to the right people. I think this should be more marketed towards adults, even to the point where it could have had a little bit more mature content in it as well, and marketed it towards us, because I lived through the 90s. So I knew almost everything in here that was talked about. And I remember, you know, I spent a lot of time in the mall in the 90s. So I get it. And a lot of the stores that were talked about in here as well, you know, like Sam Goody and B. Dalton and, you know, all these stores that are no longer around anymore. I just don't think that young adults today are going to really understand it. And they're not going to have that nostalgia that I did, because this was very, very nostalgic for me. So I got the vibe. I understood everything. I just don't think that young adults today are going to get the same appreciation of it that I would have, because I lived through this and I remember all this. So that's another issue, I think, too, because honestly, from all the reviews that are happening right now, it doesn't get as high of a rating that I think it should get. And I think that might be why, because I think a lot of young adults are reading this because it's marketed towards them, but they're just like, okay, you know what I mean? So they're not able to relate to it very well. So I think if more adults, like, you know, 30, 40-year-olds like me would, if they would be reading this, I think that they would really appreciate it. So those are my thoughts on The Mall. But I did really, like, I gave it 4 stars because I really enjoyed it. It was very, very nostalgic. I laughed quite a bit in here. It was pretty funny. The writing is pretty good. And yeah, so very, very nostalgic and definitely took me back. Okay, so those are my thoughts on The Mall by Megan McCafferty. Again, it comes out July 28th, so I will leave an Amazon link to this book down below if you guys are interested in picking it up. I definitely recommend it. It's definitely a good read. It's a quick read. It's a lot of fun. So I hope you guys will pick it up, and I hope that you will enjoy it as much as I did. And that is going to be it for me. Huge thanks to Wednesday Books for sending along a early review copy for me to read. I really appreciate it. And I will talk to you guys again soon. Let me know if you have any questions. Bye.